Okay, let's recap a bit, shall we? This was meant to be a new start, really. A perfect world. Free from all the evil that had corrupted each and every corner of the known and unknown universe. It was going to be a place of safety for the kids, the little yous. You little... Well, so far, so good. But things started to go wrong soon after you arrived.
Hey, you're probably confused with what's happening right now. Well, I'll explain it later. This is the Cod Zombies Lore, from my interpretation of it, Part 1. Let's go. We begin in the beginning. Before history, in primordial times, there was nothing at all but only the Aether itself. The Aether is kind of like reality. It's, the reality itself. And the Keepers along with it. The Keepers are a race of ancient beings that protected the Aether and kept everything in order. Kind of like angels. Among the Keepers were beings that at the time would come to be known as the Shadow Man and Dr. Monty. Very, very important names. The Keepers created and manifested the power of one summoning key. The summoning key is often described as the tool used to paint on the canvas that was reality. With it, the Keepers forged the holy realm of Aether, known also as the Perfect World by Dr. Monty in what you just saw in the beginning. For an unknown but very long stretch of time, it was perfectly tranquil and Aether was, in harmony. That was until a group of Keepers, involving the Keeper known as the Shadow Man, well, would be later known as the Shadow Man, discovered and tampered with the sort of anti-Aether, which was it was the negative tranquility, it was the destruction, it was the discord, it was the destruction. I think I already said that. It was called the Dark Aether, and it is the realm that exists as the counterpart to the Aether. It was a place known below creation, where no Keeper was allowed to go, for a very good reason. The Dark Aether corrupted Keepers and corroded their minds over time. It warped and twisted their bodies into something brand new, the Apothicons. Tensions began to rise within Aether between the pure Keepers and the contagious Dark Aether affected corrupted Keepers, now distinguished as the Apothicons. At this time, the multiverse had been founded already by the Keepers, and using the new dimension below Aether but above the Dark Aether, the Apothicons laid out plans to build an Aether pyramid on a moon somewhere within this reality, and that happened to be the moon of Earth. This pyramid would give the accessor dominance over the Aether and give them ultimate power. Soon after the pyramid's construction, the Apothicons and Keepers went to war in the War of Aether, the result of which has the eternal banishment of all Apothicons into the Dark Aether. Now, that would be cool and great, but the Apothicons did not stay to serve their sentence. They did not stay there forever. It's the year 5 CE on Earth. Humans already are starting to dominate it. Knowing that Earth contained a gateway to Aether, the Apothicons plotted to lay a trap for humanity. They sent meteorites from the Dark Aether to the planet containing a foreign material referred to in the series, in the Cod Zombies lore, as Element 115. As it was a product of the Dark Aether, naturally, Prolonged amounts of time in contact with element 115 would cause serious issues and conditions in people. Documented symptoms of element 115 exposure spanned many things like nausea, hallucinations, paranoia, mental breakdowns, memory loss, schizophrenia, and death. Despite the risks, Apothicons still knew that humans would inevitably go to war over the extraterrestrial material, which was when they would have their chance to take revenge on Argatha. In the year 1292, the Apothicons striked and the Great War began. It lasted for 7 full years, and with the aid of the Keepers, humanity emerged victorious in re-banishing the Apothicons back into the Dark Aether. Some notable figures who fought within the Great War were the Wolf King, Sir Pablo Marinus, and the Saviours known as Primus. Pablo Marinus was saved from a Margwa by Primus. A Margwa is an Apothicon. The 4 heroes in Primus seemingly disappeared from history after the Great War, but it is known that before their disappearance, they instructed the Wolf King to erect a castle in their honour, which would much later come to be known as the setting for Der Eisendrache, the map. Upon the death of the Wolf King, his servant Arthur the Giant fulfilled his master's dying wish for his remains to be scattered across the castle grounds. However, after completing his final task, he was transported for a temporal rift to an underground town in Africa in the year 2025. I'll explain why that happens later on. In the year 1885, in the western town of Purgatory Point, a young man named Jebediah Brown would soon have his whole world irreversibly warped. Purgatory Point was a mining town which had a rich underground deposit of element 115. The town was in America, it was. One day, he heard news that his mother had been killed in the mines by a miner who had seemingly gone rabid. In truth, he was a necrotized miner who had succumbed to element 115, a zombie. Knee-deep in grief, Jebediah ventured into the mines to search for the truth behind his mother's death. After unknowingly having spent 5 days underground, upon emerging, he collapsed. While asleep, he saw visions of what he thought to be angels. In reality, they were keepers, who instructed him to build a device he would call the Pack-a-Punch machine, a crucible which would enhance the firepower abilities of any items placed into it. After days of building, he finished creating the machine. The following night, he was then assigned the new task of creating the Agarthan device by the Keepers. The Agarthan device was an ornament and artifact equal to the summoning key in power. It could control the multiverse itself. The angels, which are the Keepers, asked Jebediah to obtain the blood of an elder god under the ocean, obtain a soul-infused elemental shard, and to forge a vril vessel to contain the shard. Jebediah could only fulfill the third of the request, which was creating the vril vessel. But after creating it, he was instructed to place it within the Pack-a-Punch machine. After doing so, though, Purgatory Point as a whole was transported to a deep cavern in Angola 140 years into the future. And that is also where Arthur the Giant was taken to. Fast forward to the dawn of the 20th century. The year is 1908. A very large deposit of element 115 was discovered within a meteorite which landed near the stony Tunguska River in Siberia. Over the next few decades leading up to World War II, many more major deposits of 115 were discovered across the globe, in America, Japan, Germany, and even on the moon. Focusing on Germany, in 1931 a deposit was found in Breslau, and because of this, a scientist by the name of Dr. Ludwig Maxis took the charge and founded a research corporation named Group 935. While it was international, it was German-led and received funding by the Nazis. Group 935 founded its first major facility within Breslau, named Der Ries, meaning the giant. Group 935 aimed to and sought to use Element 115 in ways that benefited instead of harmed. His goals by this, Maxis's goals, were to improve the human condition and also to develop new advanced technologies and weaponry using Element 115. Maxis made all contributing scientists of Group 935 swear an oath of loyalty and silence. They would not be allowed to contact their families, home governments, or friends for their entire time Group 935 was active, and they stayed to it, loyal to it. Along with its foundation, Maxis himself invited one of his great friends, one Dr. Edward Richtofen, to join Group 935. Truth to be told, Richtofen himself, at this time, had no interest in the Group 935, nor Dr. Maxis. However, he still agreed to join in on the project, as he worked as a secret agent of the Illuminati, and he and them both believed that joining the project would be of benefit to their own cause. Over the next few years of working together, Maxis and Richtofen worked on many different projects. The most notable was in 1939 with the teleportation experiments. The two of them aimed to literally teleport living human subjects. They ran these experiments using their matter transference prototype teleporter. While they were greatly ambitious, it didn't take long for them to learn that working with humans was a very bad idea. The successful subjects ended up catatonic and literally changed in their genetical information, and this is a consequence of dark ether corruption with the element 115 in the teleporter. Richtofen, who I should probably mention is called Ultimus Richtofen in this timeline, there's a lot of Richtofens. Richtofen himself worked on many crude but brilliantly effective weapons that utilised the findings from Group 935. Most importantly was the Wunderwaffe DG2, and the magnum opus that was his symbol monkey bomb. The first successful teleportation ever occurred in an experiment held by Dr. Richtofen and Dr. Schuster, where they teleported a walnut. While this was a monumental achievement, it failed to impress Dr. Maxis, whose expectations had risen greatly after the deal to receive funding by the Nazis had gone through. However, Richtofen worried that this would lead to mass defections, so he continued to conduct the teleportation experiments behind Maxis's back. In 1940, Schuster and Richtofen held their first human teleportation test in a long time, and they were so confident in its success that Richtofen himself volunteered to be teleported. Upon beginning teleportation, Richtofen was transported to the moon, where he came into contact with the Aether pyramid, calling it the MPD, abbreviation for Moon Pyramid Device. Once he touched it, he was electrocuted and began hearing whispers and voices of corruption from the dark Aether, one of them being the Shadow Man. He was then taken to a jungle temple in the Himalayas, which is Shangri-La, where he was worshipped by the native tribe, who built an altar in his name. It was here that he also encountered the focusing stone, which he would later on use in his grand scheme, which we'll talk about in a bit. Driven slowly by the voices of corruption now, Ultimus Richtofen was gradually driven insane by an obsessive desire to reach Agatha, which is a shared ambition between him and the apothecons who corrupted him. A few weeks after the initial human test, Richtofen mysteriously was teleported back to Der Ries. But he was changed. He was rambling nonsensically about the creation of an intricate facility on the moon he would call Griffin Station. He also renounced his involvement with the Illuminati at this point. He was fed up with Maxis's intense loyalty to Germany. And so there was now a division between Group 935, with the people who sided with Maxis and the people who sided with Richtofen, and wished to help him build his moon base. Several months after Richthofen's return to Der Riese, Maxis requested additional funds and Element 115 from the Reichstag High Command. In response to this, Nazi Germany constructed 2 more facilities in Berlin for Group 935, the Kino facility in an abandoned theatre, Kino der Toten, which you're seeing right now actually, and the Asylum facility, which is Verrucht, at the repurposed Wittenau Sanatorium. Okay, before I continue, I've just deleted 10 minutes worth of speech, so I'm a bit annoyed right now, and I've just had to re-record it because I messed up, because I'm at my project's limit for cutting out, errors, so I'm a bit annoyed. Anyways, let's just try and get this done, right? Let's get to the end of part 1, right? Here we go. The Imperial Japanese Army also donated the use of their Rising Sun facility to Group 935, which collaborated with and was originally a Division 9 facility. Division 9 was kind of Japan's equivalent to Group 935. Group 935 also established a facility in Siberia near the Stony Tunguska River, and a research facility at Der Eisendrache called Eagle's Nest. Ultimately, by the early 1940s, Group Griffin Station was completed. Ultimus Richthofen was the leader of this project, not Maxis, and he appointed Dr. Groff as the lead scientist at Griffin Station and tasked him and Dr. Schuster to discover a way to power up the MPD. Back at the Rising Sun facility, Maxis developed the ray gun prototype, while Dr. H. Porter developed the second-generation ray gun. In May 1942, Ultimus Richthofen and his soldiers discovered the town of Purgatory Point in Africa. Richthofen discovered ruins of the Pack-a-Punch machine and the schematics for the Agarthan device, as well as the Vril device. Richthofen immediately requested that these schematics be rebuilt and replicated by H. Porter. Also in 1942, Dr. Monty begins his nudging and slightly tampering with the timeline. He influences members of Group 935 to eventually build and develop the Perca-Colas. These machines were specifically made in the Kino facility. Monty did this so Ultimus would have a better chance of forwarding Richthofen's grand scheme, which is something we'll get into a little bit later on. By the way, the Perca-Colas are the little things you see in the bottom left of the screen right now. You probably already knew that, but I'm just going to say it, I guess. Sometime after Richthofen finishes in Purgatory Point, but still in 1942, Dr. Schuster and Dr. Groff unintentionally discover the way to activate the MPD at Griffin Station. They figured it out by killing a rat that got near the pyramid, which caused the essence to be absorbed in one of the corner canisters of the pyramid. Upon informing Richthofen of this, he was ecstatic. He ordered tens of Group 935 scientists to sacrifice themselves to the pyramid. And after the execution, the pyramid did in fact fill up more than the rat. It filled up in larger margins than the single rat, obviously. At the end of 1942, Maxis was called for work to the Kino facility to continue production of the Undead Army with his close friend Sophia. He was very concerned for Richthofen's well-being at this time, as the extensive exposure to Element 115 may have been destroying his mind and sanity. He wanted to help his friend, but he also couldn't trust him in this state. This posed a very serious dilemma to him, as he could not bring his daughter Samantha with him to the Kino facility, so he begrudgingly conceded and left her in the care of Richthofen. And Richthofen himself was less than enthusiastic about this, to be sure. Over the next 2 years, not many special things happened. However, in 1943, Nikolai Belinsky of Stalingrad was captured by Group 935 as a human test subject, as well as a Japanese man who was also given to Group 935 by the Emperor of Japan, Takeo Masaki, a servant to the Emperor who saw him as all righteous. In 1944, a Mexican spy called Pablo Marinas was captured by Group 935 at the Der Eisendrache facility, Eagle's Nest. He was mad and rambled endlessly about a great war involving demon-like creatures and 4 knights. However real they seemed to him, no one believed his nonsensical psychosis. In 1945, a US operative, Peter McCain, infiltrated one of Group 935's bases. In the same year, July 1945, Richthofen made the decision to transfer to the Siberian facility. With him, he brought Samantha and his vril vessel. He transferred as he wanted to work with live specimens. Also in 1945, just outside of the Siberian facility, an American man who claimed to be a reporter said that he was hired by a man called Mr. Rapt to find an ancient artifact. He was tasked with finding many ancient artifacts, in fact, one of which was the vril vessel Richthofen had at hand. Disturbed by the man's situation and seeing him as a threat to his grand scheme, Richthofen ordered the guards of the station and facility to kill the man. This reporter and the identity of Mr. Rapt are more important than they appear currently. In August 1945, Group 935 transferred the 3 specific test subjects, Nikolai, Pablo and Takeo, to Richthofen. He began looking for ways to create an elemental shard at this time too, while also testing on these 3. In comes the Americans. Cornelius Purnell, a man who would go on to do and make great things in the world, at this time had his eyes on Group 935. He ordered Peter McCain to be sent to infiltrate Group 935. Having suspected that their experiments would lose control, he sent a Marine, one Tank Dempsey, to go and rescue Peter, as his cover as an American spy had been blown. Of course, Dempsey was not the only saviour. Cornelius sent a whole recon team to rescue Peter. Upon reaching the asylum facility where Peter was located, the recon team found the research station in complete tatters. A zombie outbreak had occurred, and everyone was dead. Dempsey was captured in the midst of the battle against the undead, and he too was sent straight to Richthofen as a replacement for Pablo Marinas. Pablo was believed to have died during an operation conducted by Richthofen and Harvey Yeaner to remove his spleen, so there was now a space. Dempsey was sent straight to Richthofen. Richthofen, having Dempsey, Nikolai and Takeo at his disposal, was over the moon. He wanted to document how their personalities changed after each and every experiment. He noted Dempsey as having low intellect but a strong will. Takeo was written to have been staring at the floor and muttering proverbs repeatedly. Nikolai was noted that he was unresponsive but would respond when given a dose of a serum made primarily out of vodka. Richthofen was finding that all of his subjects' minds were completely shattered, with them having no clear memory of who they once were. It was also around this time where he began conducting cruel experiments on Max's young daughter Samantha. As Richthofen continued to find a way to build the Agarthan device, he somehow managed to take a piece of his own and the 3 others' souls and imbue them into a rock of element 115. It transformed into the elemental shard, an item which bound all of their souls directly to the Aether, which meant that all possible and real incarnations of their souls were linked to each other across the entire multiverse and every dimension. However, Richthofen did not know the implications that came with creating the elemental shard. Richthofen, delusional because of his exorbitant exposure to 115, finally snapped against Maxis and Samantha. After he learnt that Maxis did not mass-produce the Wunderwaffe DG2, he plotted to destroy both of them and vowed to no longer continue work on Maxis' undead army. In October 1945, with the war over, Maxis and Richthofen reconvened at the Deriz facility so that he could continue their long-left-behind work on teleportation technology. Richthofen arrived several days after Maxis and brought three test subjects and Samantha. On the 12th, he was contacted by Groff that the MPD had been fully powered up and was awaiting its conduit. On October 13th, during a series of teleportation experiments and test trials, Maxis used Samantha's dog, called Fluffy, as the subject. However, the trial was a catastrophic failure. It resulted in the first Hellhound, a horrific, dark ether corrupted, undead dog. Frightened, Samantha ran towards the beast to rescue her dog. Maxis followed her into the teleporter, and this was the moment where Richthofen enacted his revenge, activating the teleporter.